Welcome to this first session in our Excel Masterclass. The aim of this series of sessions is to introduce some interesting, intermediate and advanced features of Excel, with particular reference to people who use Excel in the school environment. It's to introduce these different features in the hope that some or all of them will be useful for you to incorporate in your own spreadsheets. We'll be covering many topic areas, all of which are in the set of notes that are available for you to download. In each of our sessions we aim for a particular outcome. Now, it doesn't actually matter if that's something that you would never be interested in, that you wouldn't actually want to create that type of spreadsheet. I need to aim for something to show how everything comes together and how to get over any obstacles, but it's the actual features, the individual items that I want you to understand, see how they work, and then see how you can incorporate them into your own spreadsheets. So please don't be put off by the types of spreadsheet that I'm working on. It doesn't matter, it's the functions and the features that are very important for you to have a look at and understand. As I run through the session, I'll be showing, explaining how things work. If you're listening on the recording, I suggest that at various points you pause, you try things out on your own Excel, just to make sure that you're happy with the things that I'm covering. At the end of each session there is a little assignment that does get you to try out the different features, so please do have a go at that. I think that's very useful for you to get real hands-on experience with the different things we're looking at. So, without further ado, let me just talk about what we're covering today. We're going to be creating a little spreadsheet that holds bookings. So it could be bookings for lettings or anything at all really. It holds bookings in a calendar, but it also holds a sheet of detail regarding those bookings, which can then be used for totaling, for creating invoices, to getting lists of people who have and haven't paid, etc. And these are the topics we're going to be covering: formatting, freezing, date formatting, some validation, and then moving on to some formulas and different types of ifs. All of the things we're covering are intermediate/advanced, so I do assume that you can do the basics of moving around a spreadsheet, typing in data and saving, printing, etc. So let's jump into then my spreadsheet, and I've first of all got on screen the spreadsheet that we are aiming to complete in this session. I'm going to be starting from scratch, but this is what we hope it's going to end up like. And so we have on here, as you can see, a list of all of our lettings. It's got details of when, who, what, and so on. In addition, looking at the tabs across the bottom, I have a diary. And on my diary, as you can see down the left hand side, I have all sorts of dates. I've got highlighted blocks showing me who has booked the various dates, and the blocks change colour when a booking's made. And then a series of buttons up here at the top of the screen, which allow me to do sorting, find out when things are free, find out when there are bookings made, clear slots, book slots, and so on. So this is what I'd like to achieve on today's first session: a calendar system or a diary, and then a database that gives the detail of the bookings on the diary. So I'm showing you that as a first step, but I'm actually now going to open a brand new blank document in order to go about the business of creating that from scratch. And as we go through, please feel free to pause and enter and create the database yourself if you'd like to with me. So the first thing we had that I'm going to start with creating is a little diary system, a diary that had first of all a series of dates down the left hand side. So let's start right there. Let's start by putting our dates in. I've gone to just the cell A3 where I'd like my first bit of information to appear. And so let's say that the first date on my calendar I would like is the 1st of February 2017. I've entered that one in. I'm sure you are aware that at the bottom right hand corner of every cell there's a little black dot, which is our drag handle. And it does things like copy information, but another useful thing it will do is automatically fill in information. So let me just fill it down a few slots, and as you can see, of course, it's gone through and it has incremented my dates by a single day each time. We've got lots of options that go with that, and so there's a little box here on the side of the drag handle which are my autofill options, and as you can see when I click on it we've got different things. So we can actually say we don't rent our facilities out at weekends, we can just fill in the weekdays, and I can do that, as you can see, by clicking the box third from the bottom. And then as we go down the list, 1, 2, 3, but it completely excludes 4 and 5 because that's a weekend. So we can use the autofill options box to fill weekdays, to fill in months or years, or to just copy the cells, which means don't increment them, make them all the 1st of February, which of course is not what we want. So let me fill that in for the rest of the term. So I'll go back to the top one, I'm going to drag it all the way down to somewhere at the end of March, I'm going to say. Can you see on the screen it's showing me that I've dragged a bit too far and how far I need to go. Let's say I'm going to go to there, and I'm just going to check my autofill options and just go for weekdays. So now I have a full list from the 1st of Feb to the 18th of April, and if I don't want those April dates I'll just go to the end of March, let's say. I'll delete them off. So that's my dates, they're the right range, and we've used the autofill options to get the ones we want. What you will have noticed there was no option for filling in just weekends, so let me put this back on here, drag a couple, go back to my autofill options. There's no weekend option available. So if you did want to set up a diary system just for weekends, you have to be a little bit more actively involved. You would have to put in the first weekend, and that's the 4th of February and the 5th of February, and then you'd have to do a little calculation. Calculations, again, we always use the equal sign, and then we can do any sort of calculation we like, such as take the first Saturday, which is the 4th of February, and literally just tell it to add 7 days to it. So it's a simple calculation of whatever's there, add 7 days, and then we can do exactly the same by drag handling. And then once we've got these in place, we can just drag the sequence down, and we can literally just drag it, and therefore it will add 7 days on each time. So different options there if you want to use weekends and not weekdays, but what I want is weekdays, so I'm going to leave it as I have on the side. If you are following on your notes, we're in section 1 and this is part A of entering dates. I would just like to mention, should have mentioned before, that the things I cover in Excel will work regardless of the version you're on. So if you're on the very latest or if you're on an old version of Excel, it matters not at all. Occasionally things will be in different places, and I will mention that, but everything we use on this masterclass is generic. It's whatever version of Excel you will be able to do everything I run through. So brilliant, we've done our first thing, we've got our dates in. Now you might remember from my diary system, actually I'd like to see the day of the week as well as the actual date. And in order to change the appearance of how dates are displayed, we just need to use the formatting option. There are all sorts of ways of doing this. In the middle of the main toolbar there's a date area. I personally find it easier to use the right click. So I'm going to select all the dates on my spreadsheet by clicking the letter A up at the top left here, and that tells Excel I want to do the following to the entire column. I'm just going to do right click and format cells. It's just taking a second to pop that up. There we have it. I want this to be a date, so I'm clicking on the option for date, and then in the middle of my screen here, all sorts of different types of display for date appear. So we've got short ones, we've got long ones. Now I actually want something that's different to what's available here. I would like it to say Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and as you can see that's not offered. So I have to go right to the bottom to the option called Custom, and then I have to basically make my own date option. So do you see here in the title type we've got day, day, month, month, year, 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 year. I would just like it to say 17. I don't need 2017, so I take 2 of the Y's off, and then I precede the date with a 3D. 3Ds says I'd like the day of the week showing, please. So 3Ds for the day of the week, and then a short version of the date. Click on my OK, and as you see on screen, I've now got the type of date format that I wanted. I wanted the day of the week and a shortened version of the date. So I'm essentially happy with that now. I've got my dates in place. Maybe the text is a bit big, so same again, I'm going to select the entire column by clicking on the letter A at the top, and I'm just going to use these get bigger, get smaller font size buttons, and I'm going to take it down just 1 or 2. Yeah, I quite like it there on size 9, but I am going to bold it up a bit. And if of course I wanted to change colours or anything else, I have the toolbar up at the top here that allows me to do that. So I've got my dates in a format I want them to be, with the colour and the size. If you'd like to pause at this stage in order to create your own spreadsheet, please do so, pop some dates in and put them in the same format as mine, just so you go through that process of modification. So that's our dates in place. The next thing that was on my diary system was 3 headings, and the 3 headings were the things I have available for hire. So I happen to have the hall, the sports pitch, and the all-weather pitch. You can put anything you like in these, of course. Anything that we have that we'd like to put on our diary for booking out. It could be rooms, it could be computers, it could be audio-visual equipment, whatever you fancy. It's things that I'm putting on my lettings or out diary system. So those 3 are on. Obviously they don't quite fit. Again, I'm sure you know that if you'd like to widen a column to exactly fit the text that's in it at its widest point, you move to the borderline between column C and column D. In my case, a double-faced arrow appears and I double click it, and that makes my columns the right width for the text. In actual fact, I would like mine to all be the same size, so I'm going to highlight all 3 columns. I do it by clicking on B and then dragging over C and D. And now, when I stretch a column, all 3 of them will go to the same width. And I'm just going to make it quite a decent width in order to fill up the page nicely. And normal standard Excel stuff, I might choose now to center my headings, which is in the alignment tab here on the home toolbar. And I might want to make them bold, and I might want to make them a bit bigger, and I might make them blue as well. So all the usual formatting stuff on the home toolbar and we now have the headings we want. At this stage, I just want to make the table look a bit more table-like by perhaps putting borders on, maybe some shading. I could do that manually using the borders button here on the font section of the home toolbar, but actually I'm going to just frankly cheat and make it a bit easier for me to do. The way I do that is using on the home toolbar the button to the right hand side here called Format as Table. When I click on that, all sorts of ready-made designs appear for me. Different colours, different shading, different boxes. Some of them are dark, some of them are light, and pretty obviously I click on the one that I like the look of, and as you can see, it's put some nice formatting on my boxes for me. I would like my headings to appear where it says the word column 1, column 2, column 3. So as you can see, I'm literally just grabbing my headings and dragging them up to the top. And the first one I don't want to have anything other than the word date. So very, very simply, I've got a nice looking table without having to spend much time at it. If you decide you don't quite like the blue, you just go back to Format as Table, and now as you can see, as I'm hovering, I can see instantly what all these different effects are going to do for me. And so I'm going to go for that one, which is a nice light blue colour. So that's on the home toolbar. It's called Format as Table, and it's a very nice, quick way of making your tables look good. So it's looking pretty good as it is at the moment. There's a couple of things I want to do before I say this one's pretty much as I like. And that is, if you watch the screen as I go down through the dates, my main headings disappear and eventually everything disappears. I would find it much more useful to have the Hall, Sports, Pitch and Weather stay in place all the time. Also, if we had columns going across the screen, it would be much more useful if my dates stayed in place. And so I'm going to force the dates and the headings to stay where they are at all times using an option called Freeze Panes. So essentially the key is to move your cursor, move your selected cell to the place that is to the right of and underneath of anything you want to freeze in place. So as you can see, I've moved to B3 because then everything above 3 and everything to the left of B becomes frozen. To do this, then we simply go up to the View toolbar. Over on the right there's a button called Freeze Panes, and we click the top option of Freeze Panes. There are little black lines there you might be able to see, and now if you watch, as I scroll down I can go as far as I like and the 4 headings never disappear. Same thing goes as I scroll across the page. Even if I had many different facilities, as far as I go across the page, the dates never disappear. So I have now frozen these things in place. If you put them in the wrong place, just go back to freeze and unfreeze them, and then have another go at setting the position of your frozen panes. The key, as I say, is move your cursor underneath of and to the right of anything you'd like frozen in place. So we're nearly there on this particular spreadsheet. There's just a couple of things I want to do. I want to just put my headings in, and my headings said Lettings Diary, Spring 17, let's say. Over on the left hand side here, let's make it a lot bigger. It's still in bold. Let's do one last thing. Let's center it so that it's completely central against my columns that I've got data in. And to do that, I simply highlight all 4 of the cells at the top. So clicking on A1, I drag across to D1, and I use the button on the home toolbar called Merge and Center. and that puts it directly in the center of the columns of the cells that I've chosen. So I'm more or less there with this one. The last thing I'd like to do is I'd like to name this particular sheet. You'll know that Excel allows you to have multiple sheets on any one page. Sorry, on any one worksheet. So we can have 50 different pages showing across the bottom here as little tabs. Everything can be linked together, but they look and they appear as separate sheets in terms of viewing. Much better to do multiple sheets than to have one giant spreadsheet that you're scrolling up, scrolling down, trying to find the information. But I would like to give it a name, and it's very straightforward. At the bottom left here where it says sheet 1, I just double click. It goes black and I can change it to any name I like. And I've just called mine diary, as you can see. To create a new sheet, you just click on the next tab across and it becomes sheet 2. Next tab across becomes sheet 3. And you can name them whatever you want them to be. So I'm going to name my second one by double clicking it, and I'm going to call it details. And I'm going to name my sheet 3 invoice, and so on and so forth. If you accidentally create one you don't want, you just right click it and choose delete, and it will take that sheet away. And so I now have completed my first sheet, which is the diary system, and I've given it a name. At this point I'm going to pause the presentation and ask you to try out creating what we've done so far. Speak to you in a little while.